Were you not acting in the place of a guardian for your mother at this stage?
I am her power of attorney.
You are so surely they should have consulted with you and told you that they were going to have this assessment.
Should have done, yeah.
But they didn't?
Not at that point.
Okay.
It was up to me to kind of discover that this was happening and then to make sure that I was in the loop.
All right, so you discovered after the event. And how did you discover after the event? Did you ask them if they'd been in an assessment?
No, I started reading about funding, and I started reading a lot about, how people are supposed to be funded and how people are funded in practice or not. Also, I saw a television programme about one of the legal precedents, a lady called Pamela Coughlin, who took the NHS all the way to the appeal court for this very thing. And I started to realise that actually we maybe shouldn't be paying for this care.
So, I'm intrigued. I mean, surely the law says if there's a precedent, if this woman Coughlin had taken the NHS to court, surely after that the NHS should have said, OK, we'll pay.
Yeah, you'd think so, but the NHS doesn't always abide by precedents and test cases.
Okay.
And there are thousands of families in this situation, and there are thousands of people paying for care illegally because they should be funded by the NHS.
You're saying it's illegal?
It's illegal for the NHS to force you to pay for your nursing care if your primary need is a health care need.
And I would have thought it's fairly self-evident that if somebody's suffering from the things that your mother was suffering from, and we'll get on to your father, but just talk about your mother for the time being, that is a prima facie case, isn't it? There's a medical need.
The funding that I was looking for is called NHS Continuing Care, and that's supposed to be available on the basis of illness, disability or accident.
So 2 out of 3 was your mother, wasn't it?
You'd think so. Although when it comes to the actual assessments, the NHS will say it's not about being ill. You can be as ill as you like. It's about the actual nursing need. So you can be almost dead and you would still not qualify.
But surely if you are almost dead, and let's hope that's not the case, but if you are almost dead, surely you need nursing care, don't you? I mean, that's a given.
I would agree with you there, yes. It doesn't work that way.
Okay,
the system is flawed.
So you did this reading. You discovered that perhaps your parents shouldn't be paying £1,000 a week. So what did you do next?
So I realised that my mother had 2 assessments, both of which...
2 now?
She'd had 2, both of which had decided she was ineligible for any funding. The second assessment, they just added a few comments on, so it really wasn't done properly.
Who made the assessment?
The NHS.
So, but what sort of people? Were they doctors or?
No, it's usually a nurse assessor, plus
This is a professional role, is it? That nurses,
it is.
The nurses have, okay.
Plus somebody from social services, plus somebody from the care home. Any assessment like that is supposed to be a multidisciplinary team, but at no point were any of my mother's physicians, neurologist, GP, any of them were involved. Her full medical notes were not consulted. It was a really, really superficial decision.
How can they possibly make a judgment about the state of her health if they're not looking at her medical records?
Good question.
Surely this is, I would think, potentially incompetent, isn't it?
It's totally flawed. And it's the system that's flawed. The system allows for interpretation of the criteria. It doesn't actually force people to look at the whole picture. And if you're not there at the assessment as the relative, you have no chance. Things will just go by without you picking up on them.
So you learned that there'd been the first assessment, and what did you do? Say, I want another one?
There were 2 assessments before I kind of picked up on what was happening.
There were 2 before you were told even that they were... Why were there 2? Why wasn't there just one?
There was an initial one, and she was ineligible for that, and then for some reason they assessed her again, and it was like I guess she was on a schedule.
So they could say, oh, we've done a really thorough job here, we've done 2 assessments and there's nothing wrong with her at all, she's just in here because she likes to have tea twice a day, or whatever it is they give them.
So I wrote to say, I thought actually she should be eligible for some kind of nursing care. And I asked for copies of the assessments that had been done previously. together with the criteria they'd used to assess her. And I received copies of the assessment, but no criteria. So I was very suspicious that they hadn't actually been done properly. And then they agreed that they would do another assessment. It gets very repetitive. And they put that to an internal panel within the PCT.
Primary Care Trust.
That's right. And that came back again as no, ineligible.
Were you invited to this third assessment?
The third one, yes, I did go to.
You went to it, and did they have her medical records?
They didn't have her full records, so I was inputting with information about her health.
That shouldn't be up to you, though, should it? I mean, you're not a doctor, are you?
No, I mean, obviously I probably knew her best out of anybody in that room, but you would think that they would pull together everything possible, or at least consult the people that have, you know, monitored her care over the years, but that didn't happen. And that's the same in a lot of cases.
OK, so you went to the third assessment. You were the person who said, you stood up for your mother, effectively, and said, she has dementia, she has had 3 strokes, she has Parkinson's disease.
And they look at all sorts of things. They look at mobility, they look at your skin, they look at...
Well, the elasticity of it.
Yeah, to see how fragile it is. They look at your nutrition, they look at all sorts of things, your behaviour, your psychological needs, a whole range of things.
But how can they do that if they don't consult a doctor?
There's a lot of gaps.
How can you assess somebody's psychological needs if there are no experts in that field involved?
It comes down to a view from whoever's in the room.
So somebody with a vested interest, presumably, this is the NHS I'm talking about, says, well, no, you don't need this. So, but you were there, so
I was there.
Could you not sway the panel, if you like?
I input a lot of data for that assessment, and then the assessment goes away and it gets written up, and it comes back again with the result, which was no funding. So at that point, I asked for an independent tribunal.
And you're allowed to do that, are you?
Yeah, and that takes place at the Strategic Health Authority.
Not the Primary Care Trust?
No, it's a separate panel of people with a chair who is outside the NHS.
And does this happen in the nursing home where your mother is?
It happens at the Strategic Health Authority offices, whichever area you're in.
Does your mother go to this?
No, and that's another good point, because at no point in any of these assessments was my mother examined, looked at. So the whole thing is based on someone's notes here, someone's notes there, and someone's view.
But no proper notes, none of the doctor's notes?
No, none of the doctor's notes.
So the person isn't there that they're assessing. It's mind-boggling, isn't it? They don't refer to the expert's notes, and they just go, OK, so this was now the 4th hearing.
So the independent tribunal would...
Independent tribunal was your fourth hearing.
Thing. And that was, I think that was January '07, and I'd heard nothing. And it got to about April, and I wrote to the Healthcare Commission. The Healthcare Commission wrote back to say they can't actually help until after the independent tribunal. So it's a catch-22. What do you do?
So the independent tribunal could take as long as it liked?
So I wrote a long letter of complaint to the NHS, outlining all the reasons why I felt this was imperative, and why the assessments hadn't been done properly. And I still heard nothing from the Strategic Health Authority. And at this point,
This is 4 months on?
Yes, it was actually about 6 or 7 months on.
Okay.
At this point, I was also realising that I needed to do the same whole thing again for my father. So that was just an added complication.